Thank you, everyone. And we have a wonderful panel here. So really, my goal is to talk as little as possible and get them to share their experiences and thoughts with you. I'm going to start with really laying out the outline of today's talk. And there is really, 5 different takeaways we're talking about. One, understand the shifts in the pre-hire solutions market. Get a formal definition of WorkTech and understand how to move toward positioning yourself as a pre-hire technology in a WorkTech context. Name the cutting edge technologies that you could leverage to create that positioning and accelerate your foray into WorkTech. So that's kind of the outline, and that looks like a lot, but we're going to do it with really 4 different discrete segments. 1, a look at the market. 2, talk about modernizing pre-hire in the WorkTech context. Look at some new technologies in pre-hire and see how our panel members have leveraged them in their work. And finally, find out ways to fast track new solutions. So here they are. Ray Bixler is CEO at SkillSurvey and a longtime Harbinger customer. Welcome, Ray. I'll just go through the introductions. Elaine is founder CEO of Talvista, and she will share her experience with recruitment process transformation. Welcome, Elaine. David Hain is CEO at Gotham Growth, the largest corporate development advisory firm in human capital industry. Great to have you, David. And finally, we have Prashant Hambaker, who has worked with dozens of WorkTech companies as part of his long stint as technology expert at Harbinger. Thank you very much and welcome again. Maybe we want to, just take a couple minutes each and just talk a little bit about what makes you interested in this topic of, what's changing in pre-hire and moving toward work technology.
Do you want me to get started, Vikas?
Sure, Ray.
Sure. So welcome. Thank you for allowing me to join this esteemed panel. I know Elaine and David and Prashant very well, and think of myself as probably the weakest link here, but I'll try to carry my load where I can. So Ray Bixler, President and CEO for 14 years here at SkillSurvey. For us here at SkillSurvey, for me personally, this has been, as you can imagine, a really just surreal year. One that, has certainly impacted all of us, both professionally and personally. For us here, I don't think any different from anybody else. Really the 2 events that have, changed our thoughts, our roadmap, our perception of what is now normal would be, of course, COVID, and also the social unrest and injustice that's happened here over the past 6 months. And so I'll speak where I can during the panel here.
Thank you. Elaine,
well, I can follow. Sure. I'll follow on from Ray. So I represent actually 2 entities, the Talvista as a diversity and inclusion platform, but also Talent Function as a consulting organization, which has been around now for 11 years, which is hard to believe, but I've been in the industry for a little over 20 and have been focused only on the recruiting equation. So the process, the tech, and Ray and I think, have known each other for the 14 years or so. So looking forward to a little bit of a homecoming conversation on this as well. If he said he's the weakest link, then I'm the weakest link. So we will definitely see how this conversation progresses.
All right, welcome.
I guess nice to meet you. From our perspective, WorkTech and pre-hire is probably the most dynamic area in the last few years. And certainly with COVID removing the geographic barriers, if any existed, to hiring whether I need somebody, who's a COO. Do I really need them in my town, in my city, in my country? I think things have changed drastically, and it's no longer about workforce planning. You got to have contingent plans now, and I think it's really confusing for a lot of people. It's dynamic, it's changing, regulations, compliance. If I don't participate in stuff like this, I'll never keep up. Thanks.
Right. Thank you. Prashant?
Hello, I'm Prashant. Great to be here. Great to see you again, Ray. And of course, Ward and Barry and Katrina and everybody. Yeah, I mean, it's a very dynamic field. There are lots of considerations, like David mentioned, definitely there is diversity in recruitment. That is one issue. There is taking care of contingent workers. And in general, also, it's like, just getting things done quickly and efficiently. And that's always a challenge. So there's a lot of work happening in this area, and that's exciting.
Thanks, Prashant. Thank you very much. And welcome again. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here, and we can move ahead with our first topic, which is market overview. And there are 6 workforce trends that are causing shifts in the hiring solutions market that I'd like to quickly go over with you. First, hiring amid uncertainty, exactly as you heard just now. The industries that are hiring and the reasons for which they are hiring and the speed with which they are hiring, there is such a shift that survey after survey says that the traditional predictions about hiring are turning upside down. And so the recruiters have to deal with unpredictability and uncertainty in hiring. What that would mean is any solution that can provide predictions will be valued. Secondly, increased load on recruiters because number 1, number of applicants is growing. Number 2, candidates want quick response. And the remote options are going to stay longer. So that would mean, people will want to not travel, go with video interviews where possible, and HR would face challenges to relocate hires. There's the skill shortage because newer and newer skills become necessary to work in the new normal that Ray just mentioned. And that would mean a lot of reskilling. Time to productivity matters. Surveys show that in many cases, contingent workers would have the skills and be up to speed faster. So that changes the complexion of hiring. And finally, diversity and inclusion, something that Elaine just referred to. With all those things, what it means is the hiring solution market is shifting to prediction, automation, virtualization, early skill development, gig workers, diversity and inclusion. These shifts are combined with one other important shift, and that is the work technology. What is WorkTech? There's a lot of talk around WorkTech these days, and there's a really simple way to understand WorkTech. Broadly speaking, WorkTech is a set of technologies used to get work done. Now that's a pretty loose definition, so we're going to go one level deeper and conceive of WorkTech as a combination of 3 spaces: HR tech, collaboration, and productivity. Let's start with HR tech. Now here, as you know, this includes HR information systems, applicant tracking systems, LMSs, benefits, payroll, and other point solutions that go across the entire employee life cycle. Then there is the collaboration technologies that would include things like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Slack, email, SAP Jam, and other solutions. These are the things people live in day to day to get things done. And they have become all the more important because of remote work. And the third piece is really productivity technology. That would mean things like Salesforce for salespeople, Zendesk for support, Visual Studio for developers, and countless other solutions for different kinds of professionals in the workforce. Fundamentally, WorkTech is a combination of these three types of technologies. This sets us up to explore how pre-hire can thrive together with WorkTech in a new ecosystem. And this is what the new pre-hire ecosystem looks like. What we have is the job boards, the applicant tracking systems, and so on, all the way up to background check, credential check, reference check. And that's HR tech as we understand it. Now combine that with collaboration technologies and you get newer possibilities. For example, you could have collaboration apps. So think about some of these pre-hire technologies as Teams apps, or some of these technologies are delivered over Zoom as Zoom apps integrations. So that's where you get into combining HR tech and collaboration. That unlocks new possibilities. Similarly, by working with productivity systems, and that would mean something like Salesforce, for example, pre-hire products can tap into a large volume of data stored by productivity systems. And that would mean you could track productivity of past hires, skill gaps with respect to new job positions, and do better predictions in terms of your recommendations for talent. So rather than think of HR tech as standalone suite of technologies where there are point solutions linking to backend systems of record, now we begin to think of WorkTech as HR tech flanked by collaboration on one side and productivity systems on the other side, adding value and new monetization opportunities to HR tech. So in short, why monetize pre-hire for WorkTech? First, for better user experience, right? Because by leveraging collaboration platforms, you could have recruiters, hiring managers, and HR live inside the collaboration apps, accessing the pre-hire functionality. For example, on a Teams channel. People do prefer virtual interactions and they interact with candidates using mobile interfaces. So better user experience is definitely one motivation for modernizing pre-hire for WorkTech. The other motivations could be better data insights by leveraging the productivity systems, because you could potentially build predictive models using performance data of hired people, and that data resides in the productivity systems. And finally, better sales opportunities, because collaboration and productivity vendors are looking for HCM use cases, and we see that when we talk to some of them. So clearly it's an opportunity for you to be on their marketplaces and leverage their channels to find new customers. So this, in short, brings us to the inevitable question, how do we go about doing this? How do we modernize pre-hire solutions to take advantage of the WorkTech ecosystem? And that takes us to the most exciting part of this discussion, which is new technologies. Now at Harbinger, we work with dozens of companies in this space, and it's fascinating to see the use cases of new technologies. For example, take something like analytics. One of our customers is a background screening company that's gathering performance data of new hires from integrated HRIS systems to provide predictive analytics on the performance or the flight risk of new candidates. Or consider API integrations, just another example. One of our customers is a leading job board provider in the world. They have a large number of corporate customers. Each customer uses a different ATS. The job board has planned a strategy to pre-integrate with leading ATSs to improve job application experience for the portal. And it's also helping them maintain a connection with the candidate after referring them to an employer. So just there we saw a couple of examples, just API integrations and analytics that the pre-hire vendors are using. Let's invite our panel to share their stories on new technologies, and let's open this out a little bit. So I would sort of share a list of technologies here, analytics, integration, video interactions, collaboration tools, AI assistance, and blockchain. And ask you, how are new technologies critical to gain advantages? What technologies do you think pre-hire solution providers need to implement to adapt to WorkTech and to get more out of this evolution of work technology? And you can go in any order. It's okay.
Well, I'll ask first. I mean, I think it's a great question, especially since the pandemic, right? Forcing innovation, if you will, in many cases. But, like AI assistance or recruitment, RPA, automation, right? Really seeing, okay, they've been out for a while. They've been trying to find their spots, if you will, and some of them have been very, very successful. So what I've seen is, some of the RPA guys being able to do not just the sourcing and screening and engaging, and you get better NPS scores, but I've seen some of the RPA guys be able to go all the way through and hire without a human ever being a part of it. I'm not sure that's a good thing or not, but from what I've seen, I think the RPA has opened up a lot of opportunities so that you can engage more candidates, maybe a bit more personalized. This sounds weird with AI, right? But a bit more personalized, and certainly, seeing turning the RPA into, hey, I'm sorry you didn't get the job, but this particular bot has found 10 other jobs that qualifications. Are you interested? I like that, because as a candidate, if you hear something and when you hear something and are you selected, it'd be nice to know that there's something that is actually trying to help me. And I think that's a great use of technology. That's my perspective.
Thank you.
This is Katrina. I've noticed that the AI and the recruiter bots, some of them are, or most of them are, absolute garbage.
Okay.
They're basically just putting you through a flow chart, and I think that's hurtful. It doesn't work at all. It makes people very frustrated. But the ones that are actually using, machine learning, and I think these will get better and better as, of course, more data gets into them. But the ones that actually have conversational AI, where it picks up what you're putting down, I guess, those I'm very impressed with. And I think that, they're great, exactly. but a lot of people are failing, and just, they have this recruiter bot, and it's just a nightmare.
I'll pick up on that a little bit too, because having the opportunity of co-founding the Talent Board and the Candidate Experience Awards, just looking at the results from this year alone, the data sets that have come from that, which are all about the candidate experience, the number one data set that's been, I think, probably in progression for the last 8 years, is I didn't know where I fell in the status of the process. And so whether the bots, whether artificial intelligence or the tool sets allow for that collaboration, even if it is hearing from a machine that you are still in process, or that you've not been selected, but here are other options, is adding to the value piece of just knowing where I stand within the process. So thinking about, I definitely can subscribe to just feeling like I've gone through a list of question and answer that the machine doesn't answer, much like my banking situation where I'm constantly saying agent 6 times over to get to a human being. I think we'll see the same thing happen in candidate experience, where we'll start to see people saying agent or person or whatever those other options might be. But for now, the initial insight and the results I think that are seeing across many organizations is a little information is still better than no information.
Yeah. I also worry about the bias that inherently, I know they're designed and they're always saying that they get rid of bias, but isn't it biased because the older people aren't going to be as savvy to go through that sort of process as younger folks, perhaps? I don't know if anybody disagrees with me on that, but
no, Katrina, I think you're right. We're seeing a lot more conversation, I should say, around inclusion, diversity, and ensuring that whatever technologies are used in the hiring process avoid bias at all costs. I think companies' brands are now ever more important to indicate to a person, right? Who may be a job candidate today, maybe a consumer tomorrow, that they're doing their level best to make sure that whatever is in their hiring process is going to treat everybody fairly.
Mm-hmm.
So from my side, I'm excited about blockchain. I have been associated with blockchain for many years now, and I and Harpinger have done blockchain in the healthcare space and a little bit in the HR space, but it has not been so far in the hiring space. However, there is a lot of potential, and there are other companies which are doing that. So what is it essentially? I mean, I don't want to go into the details of blockchain, but essentially it is a fairly trusted mechanism that different parties can use. And so different parties can contribute their part and benefit from it. So for example, if you take background checking, then the background checking companies can contribute for a particular candidate, their records and their information. It is stored on the blockchain. And then the companies that are hiring can basically tap into that blockchain. And they can also, affect the payments that way. So, so based on every blockchain access that they do, they can pay the original company. And so the original company can have, a payment channel. So background screening and background information on candidates is one thing. We can also talk about referrals. So, I have references, and my references don't change from year to year or month to month. But every time I, apply for a job to a different company, then I have to specify my references. Then the company contacts those references and says okay, what do you think about this person? And they respond. And so this whole process, this whole cycle is kind of repeated to every company that I apply to. On the other hand, my references and the actual reference material also could securely stay on the blockchain. And then whenever a company wants, they can tap into the blockchain and get that information. So referrals is another thing, even just resumes, So I have a resume, I have different parts to what I have done, different skills, different abilities, different potential, and that can all go into the blockchain and companies can tap it. So this repetitive kind of thing that is happening where, my resume is on multiple job boards, my resume is at multiple target companies, all that can be kind of simplified and put on the blockchain, and people can essentially collaborate and benefit from it. So I see that is, that has good potential. The main thing is that people have to come together in a spirit of collaboration. And of course, the HR Tech Alliances is a great example where people are coming together. So, so this is the kind of the appropriate way of going forward, I believe.
Yeah, I think blockchain is great. I love the concept of it, but I see it as basically it's warehouses of data secured by blockchain, but there's no big central man behind the curtain blockchain where everybody has their data. So you're going to have, you say you move from job to job, is it going to be in the old employer's blockchain and then you got to take it with you and put it in the next employer's blockchain? Or is it going to be the blockchain for my state, the blockchain for, women or whatever? I mean, where's going to be the centralized system?
Yeah, so,
I mean,
I would say initially, at least, yes, there will be some groups, but that is still an improvement over the current situation. So if you say, for example, let's take and do this by say, like 50 states, okay, then at least, we would have like a reduction and, a consolidation over there. And the benefits will, over time, kind of like prove themselves. And then later on, if you want to talk to, we can like, to do further consolidation, maybe a few winners will come ahead.
Prashant, your background, your PhD was actually in distributed computing. So you basically re-engineered the idea of having all these little terminals around and bringing all this information now together the opposite way. It's kind of interesting. So Ray is here representing a thought from a vendor that actually does a lot of verifications. And of course, that's always the question. Once you verify something, should you have to verify it again? And of course, for the background screening industry, there's certain rules into that, but would your company be willing to work with your 12 other vendor competitors and actually, putting all of your data to where each of the other could access it at a future point?
Yeah, I think, we have to do that. See, even like, let's take something completely non-blockchain, right? So currently also with some of our customers, they have multiple teams and we work and we play well, So, okay, Harbinger has some strengths. That's why they come to us. Somebody else might, be better. So if, say, for example, you want like some very cutting edge artificial intelligence. So you go to a specialist company, you want some great UI design, you go to yet another company or hire people in your company to do that. So, so we play with all these people now, right? And so I think it's the same, same process, a little bit different.
Well, a decade ago, I think at one time you had 25 different vendors that were learning management systems, LMSs, that were doing work with, Harbinger was, at the same time. Now, somehow you guys figured it out then. Is there a plan to be able to figure that out now for blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, yes, I mean, we work with multiple LMS companies simultaneously, and we, maintain their intellectual property separate from each other. Also, we work with like multiple companies in healthcare where there are some similarities, but we like keep their particular intellectual property separate. We bring to the table the technology advances, but the intellectual property belongs to our customers. Similarly, I would say in the blockchain world, the individual companies will retain their intellectual property and their access over data, their ownership of data, and other people can like tap into it and get the data on a per use basis. So yes, definitely, I think that's possible.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Prashant. What I'll do is I'll keep this going a little bit and then come back to the panel again. That's okay. And this is really the final issue we come to, which is to how to do this quickly, right? I mean, there are all these fascinating technologies. There are various integration platforms. There are these AI bot building solutions. There are, the blockchain. We had a lot of discussion on that. But how does a solution vendor sort of leverage these technologies sufficiently quickly to fast track new solutions? There are two primary ways to look at this, and they're obvious. I mean, there's either you build faster, round up a lot of people and get this done quickly, or you partner and integrate with someone who has already built pieces of the solution. And I think some of this was earlier discussed in the earlier session. One of our customers is a job board for veterans, and as you can imagine, matching a military veteran's resume with a civilian job opportunity is not easy. And the recruiter needs to relate sophisticated and specialized work experiences from one context to another. So they needed to build an intelligent searching and matching engine from ground up, and we helped them do that. There wasn't really an opportunity to sort of partner and integrate and leverage something pre-built. On the other hand, we had this other customer that also had a candidate matching challenge, and they did not have the time to build from ground up. So we recommended that they integrate with a resume parsing service that used natural language processing for better extraction of skill information. This integration helped the customer quickly launch their solution in the market. And it also ensured that their team was not distracted by maintaining the natural language processing engine. So those being the options, I want to turn to our panel once again and find out what are your thoughts in terms of fast tracking new solutions. There's a lot of exciting opportunities. To what extent do you go buy versus build? How do you make that call? What are some of the best practices for partnering and so on? Again, open to you.
Yeah, Vikas, I'll start. So for us, it always comes down to resources. What are the resources that you have in front of you that allow you to consider one path or the other? Resources being people, time, and there's only so much of those, right? Running SkillSurvey for 14 years now, I've got a board to report to. We're private equity backed, and they never want us to break the bank, and yet they want us to grow. So again, you have to always go back to, okay, what are the resources that we have available in front of us? For us this year, particularly, we did something a little bit unusual. We normally have a roadmap well thought out, well planned out. And today, the day for me was March 11th when things just changed. We decided to pivot very quickly for a couple different things where we thought we could do it ourselves because we have the subject matter expertise in-house, and we were able to shift resources around to go ahead and do these things. One of those things was to add a competency cluster to the over 600 surveys that we have that allow job candidates to be assessed as to whether or not they have the ability to work remotely. We never had that on our surveys beforehand, but we saw that to become a pressing need. And how do you assess someone's ability to work remotely, since everyone is now, or most people that can, are doing that? The other was to fast track a post-hire solution that we just launched. We accelerated that because we ultimately felt, and so far we're right, that our clients are really struggling to understand how a new hire is performing 30 days after they started. Are they empowered? Are they engaged? Do they feel like they're ready for the job? And also getting that feedback from the manager. This is information that they need literally real time to ultimately determine, who is struggling, who is not really ready, and why, to make determinations from that. Now we'll also go down the other path. We're not an applicant tracking system. Almost all of our clients use one. They prefer to be more efficient, more effective by embedding our solution in their applicant tracking system or CRM. And so we've done that almost 4 dozen times. And so it really comes down to what do you have in-house, and then where do you think it's best to leverage partners, outside the building, ultimately really to benefit the client.
Sure. And since you mentioned post-hire, is that also sort of use cases for measuring productivity and performance of the candidate, or supporting collaborative workflows? Because now that's closer to the WorkTech as you go post-hire.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we're not looking to become all of a sudden a performance management suite for organizations, but we kept getting responses back from our clients to say, look, we made the hiring decision. We leveraged SkillSurvey as well as other things, right? Be it video interviewing, personality assessments, whatever. We leveraged you to hear from others, references, to determine whether or not this person was worthy of being hired. And then what happens, outside of doing a very labor-intensive validity study, which requires a whole bunch of different data sets to be traded back and forth, is there a way for you to automate that? And so we created the PostHire solution to address that concern, to ultimately determine how is the new hire performing 30, 60, 90 days later, and tie that data set back to the reference feedback in an automated way to see if we could even make the reference feedback more predictive. So it checks a lot of boxes for us, but ultimately it really was to solve a problem that was urgent for companies, which is what's happening to these people that we're hiring. Traditionally, a lot of this onboarding's in person, especially younger generations that maybe required even more than someone who's been around the block a few decades. And now that these people are being onboarded at home, we don't know what's going on. And we have no idea really if the manager understands and really can help effectively get this person up to speed as quickly as possible.
Sure. Thanks for sharing that. It's a fascinating perspective on how customer needs change overnight, literally.
And I think just to carry that, Ray, I appreciate that you said the problem to solve, because so oftentimes there's just a me too, so let's make another one. So like you even said, the applicant tracking systems that exist, how many of them are out there? At Telvista, our goal is decision support in a couple of key areas, but not to blend out into being what everybody else is as well. So integration is really important. We develop upon just the areas that we're in, but integration becomes critical in the rest of the ecosystem, because we're not going to do applicant tracking. We're not going to be doing some of the other job requisition components and those pieces. We just don't need to, with the way that APIs exist today and the way that data can flow between different products. It makes it a lot easier to just say that we can connect into whatever that ecosystem and tech stack is that each employer probably has, which is in many cases very unique to them as well, based on which way they've grown organically or acquired from their solution set. But it is about a problem to solve, and it's about solving problems that have yet to be solved versus solving the same problems over and over again. So,
sure. And purely in terms of prioritizing, and I guess either of you could answer this question. Do you go by, let's say, the market share of the ATSs and say, okay, this one first, this one next, or just as you encounter them within a customer context, how do you decide the order in which you want to build integrations with ATSs or any other systems of record?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Certainly, we try to categorize client demand first. That is our job, is to support our clients. We appreciate their business. And so, if a subset of those clients are saying, hey, we want you to integrate with applicant tracking system X, we set out to do that. We have a team here dedicated to do that. And we assume in most cases that so does the applicant tracking system partner. And I think both parties want to support the mutual client to the best of their benefits. And then we also will look at those that are fastest growing, that we think the demand will be coming soon, to ultimately make decisions there. But for the most part, Vikas, to answer your question directly, it's mostly client driven. Where is the biggest need? Because again, we only have so many resources there to do so many at any given year. Sure.
I'm just going to ditto what Ray said, because it's the exact same situation for us. It starts with what are the customers, what products do they want us to integrate with, and how well can we do that through those partner relationships, and then who's growing the most, that has the greatest opportunity for us from a growth strategy. But same answer.
Okay. Would you like to add anything, Prashant, David?
Sorry, not from my end. I think they covered it pretty well.
Yeah,
great.
Ray and Elaine covered it very well. Essentially, it is, every company brings its own strengths, and it is hard for them to get into different geographies or different areas within the tech stack sometimes. And so you have to kind of figure out what will have the best impact on the customers and work together as appropriate.
I'll add one last thing I just thought of too, because one of the hardest things about being in this space is the ability to say no. So oftentimes clients that don't have something else in their ecosystem that doesn't exist, and they come back and say, well, can't you just add this to your solution? If you were just to add these two tracking mechanisms, I could in essence use your product in a way that it wasn't designed. And it is probably one of the hardest things to do to, you know, when you think about business and revenue and growth strategy, is to stay, what I'm calling, we're staying in our lane and not allowing those extra, if you only added this one thing, I could actually solve by not having to do these other two things into the equation. And I think that as a software side of things, that's probably one of the hardest things we have to do on a day in and day out basis, is learning to say no or point them in another direction for that solution.
Yeah, Elaine, I'll plus one you on that. It is the hardest thing to do, right? You want to please everybody. But at the end of the day, hitting the pause button to actually ascertain whether or not there are other clients in need of the same thing versus just chasing one-offs can lead to wild distractions and regrets later on. You know, the book that really is one of the ones that still is front and center for me, Innovator's Dilemma. It's the challenge that we always face is you want to stay fresh, you want to stay inventive. And yet when you start to have, you know, hundreds or thousands of clients sending you one-offs, it can really spiral you down a path that ultimately doesn't pay off the way you'd like it to.
One of the strategies I have seen with another company is they have decided to pre-integrate with a certain number of market-leading systems of record. And for everyone else in the long tail, they have the API. You know, they say, okay, go suit yourself, you know, build the integrations yourself. So that may be another option to explore. Any other thoughts before we move on to conclusion? Okay. So the basic takeaways for today are the pre-hire workflows have shifted and WorkTech is emerging on the scene. So there are new opportunities and new technologies are here to help us. We talked about some of them. And to accelerate your roadmap, you can consider, you know, outsourcing, getting a bigger team to work, or doing partner integrations. These are all different ways to meet the same end. So at this stage, I would like to invite my colleague Subodh to tell us how Harbinger can help in some of these goals. But before he does that, I just wanted to share with you that this month, Harbinger celebrated 30 years of service to this industry from the time we were founded. And it's been a proud moment for all of us to have served so many hundreds of customers that have built the leading enterprise software solutions in the same space, you know, human capital management, learning, employee engagement, learning experience design. You know, this is where we have lived, and we've been fortunate to make a difference to so many millions of people's lives indirectly. So over to you, Subodh.
Thank you, Vikas, and thank you, everyone. I think it was fascinating to listen to your experiences, the ideas that you brought up, the challenges that you have faced on the pre-hire side of things, on connecting with the whole WorkTech idea that Vikas shared. So here's a quick look at what we do at Harbinger. So we are working with product engineering companies as well as enterprises, and we're providing them with the technology services to build their productions, to build their products, their solutions. And for some, you're also helping them with their data engineering requirements. And we also have a strong consulting team that help our customers across multiple aspects of their product roadmap. It could be on areas like cloud architecture, technology stack, user experience design, and so on. In fact, talking about user experience and what Vikas mentioned initially, our design experts, they have devised ways that can help you figure out whether your pre-hire workflows are suitable for going on to collaboration platforms. Our consulting team on the design side, they use frameworks and tools to rate these workflows across different scales and different parameters. And the output of all this is that it gives you a prioritized list of which workflows you want to migrate or which workflows are possibly better off where they are. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on this session. And over to you, Vikas.
Thanks again, Subodh. And yeah, great to be with everybody. Any last comments, thoughts, questions, musings? You're welcome. We have a couple of minutes.
This is Marilyn. Just a quick question here. Without naming names, what are some of the kind of mistakes that you see happen? You have a lot of clients that are in the WorkTech space, and sometimes you see the crawl, walk, run as there's level of capability and prowess. But what are some common mistakes that you're seeing?
Oh, do not get me started. Well, I would say, you know, Ray hit it on the head, you know, the inability to say no and just go on making the product heavier and heavier and heavier with features. That's number one. For companies in the early stage, getting swayed too much by the highest paying customer without knowing if that's a representative customer. Is that the primary customer you're serving? Not saying that this is what we are really, really good at, and we are okay to partner for these other things which are sooner or later going to be commoditized, or someone else is going to own them anyway. So it's a losing war. We don't want to win it. We just want to do this. This is right for us. So I'll pause there because I'm sure you'll get a long list of mistakes.
Well, I've got plenty of them. But you know, Marilyn, probably the biggest one that I try to share with founders, early stage businesses, is it's impossible to boil the ocean. You just can't be all things to all people, especially if you have a solution that can be sold to all people, right? And we have one of those. So, you know, we have a solution that can be sold to small, mid-size, enterprise level, all industries. And that's the wonderful thing, but that's also the biggest challenge. I'm not saying that eventually you can't start to disperse, but I found early on finding your niche, finding your audience, whomever that is, could be a vertical market, could be a job leader, could be sales, could be customer service, could be HR. But whatever that is, then really, you know, do the best job you can to ensure you're making the right decision with the data that you have in hand, and then go for it. And, you know, I just see too many companies trying to do it all at once. And we tried it too, and it doesn't lead to much success.
Yeah, that's certainly been my experience in the past 3 decades. is narrow and deep tends to win over broad and shallow.
Yeah, you bet.
So, right.
Vikas, I have a different question. You know, what are you seeing from customers in their requests for you to add to their pre-hire solutions? You know, build this or do this or add this because of this certain vertical like healthcare. I mean, are you getting certain requests that are somewhat new and innovative, or are you seeing just people wanting to add things to be more complete?
I can start with that one from our perspective. And really, I think it's been add something that already exists just to make it more complete, because they don't want to go find another solution to do it. And so it is a balancing act. I haven't seen much in the way of this is really cool and new and completely different. Every once in a while we get a couple of those ideas, maybe around metrics and analytics that may not be able to be solved in some other ways. But for the most part, it is, can you add things that we already know already exist in other platforms and products, and the ability to say no to those, or to demonstrate how it's better to use their solution than ours. I always use the three C's. It's either collaboration, competition, or co-opetition. And you're figuring out which one of those three actually is the right blended solution for the client is unique in each way.
Thanks, Elaine. And David, here's how I would answer your question, just based on what we are hearing from our customers. Much of what I shared with you earlier in this presentation, the whole WorkTech space and integrations with productivity and collaboration, that's not a result of what they are asking us to do. That's a vision that we have developed, and we are validating it selectively with those vendors in those two spaces. In other words, we're talking to the leading collaboration technology in the world, and they are saying to us, how do we bring HCM on board, as one of our use cases. So that's what is telling us that there are opportunities here. So I do not want to sort of convey a sense that everybody is scrambling for those opportunities. That's not happened yet. That's the vision that we have postulated here. We think it will go in that direction. So the simple answer to your question is a lot of the requests are integration requests. And Prashant can correct me if there's something additional he would like to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, integrations definitely, and bots, and of course mobile. So wherever possible, like a mobile front end, which will let people do things quickly. So that's still on the table very much. So and then more and more analytics is what I would say. So bring insight from the data that you already have. So that's the short term. And then, like Vikas said, the longer term seems to be like, integration with collaboration tools and so on.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments before we wrap up?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, I have to say that my favorite line had to be wild distractions and regrets. So thanks for that, Ray. I think most of us have been there and done that and learned that lesson well. So thank you, Dr. Joshi, and congrats on your anniversary, Harbinger. Thank you for this fantastic panel. We appreciated hearing each of your perspectives in an area that continues to be both important and changing.